evening. Tonight is Monday, November 14th. It is the regular city council meeting for the city of St. Peter. We will call the meeting to order. All please join in the Pledge of Allegiance. We all should have a copy of the agenda for tonight's meeting. Are there any changes or corrections to the agenda? If not, is there a motion for approval of the agenda?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
All in favor of the agenda as it appears, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. First up tonight, we have public hearings. And the first one we have is for the assessment of unpaid utility charges. And I think Paula will start with you. It is 7:02 p.m.
Mayor and members, while Paul is sitting down, we'll mention that there are rules up on the overhead relating to how public hearings are held, and if anybody wants to participate, how they may participate. I will also mention that at one of the public hearings, we do have some correspondence to read into the record. That's the next public hearing. So after that, I'll be quiet and let, is it for this one, Paul?
Yeah.
I'll let Paula do her thing.
The unpaid charges that we come to you annually has the cutoff date of May 31st, 2016. Any of the delinquent accounts at that point we deal with and either are able to assess them or we decide to write them off. Even though we make the motion to write off those accounts do continue to have collection on those at the credit bureau. So if they do come into our reach again, we can collect that into our revenues. The property owners and the tenants of these properties have been notified by letter telling them that this public hearing has been set for tonight. It's been published in the newspaper. And so we have assessments of $5,905.76 and then write-off accounts of $9,927.42. The amounts on the overhead is what we started with. The numbers I've given you now are the ones of the balance that we have. So some have been paid. Some of the owners have come in and cleared up some things. Some have chosen that they do not want it to go into the assessment process. So in total, right now, we are at about $15,833.18, which encompasses about 52 utility accounts.
Questions of Paula at this point? If not, is there anyone present tonight that would like to make any comments about this matter?
Mayor and members, we do have one letter that we received from Mark Bachman at 806 South Minnesota Avenue. I'll just go through the letter quickly. Mayor and members, we should read it into the record or reference it for the record. Dear City Administrator, I'm ready to object to the assessment charged against me due to the negligence of the former owner of 806 South Minnesota Avenue. Property ID number is 194124570. My realtor has made repeated attempts to have the former owner pay her final utility bill. And it's signed by Mark Bachman, who's the current new owner.
I do have a question. I know we got it coming up later as a resolution, but I do, as long as we're talking about it, question on this. How long has he owned this property? Do we know?
I don't know the answer to that.
Do you know?
I looked earlier today on the county's website, and since February 17th, 2016.
2016. Now, you know,
2 months or less.
yeah, I've bought properties that, you know, that's all part of the process of checking if there's any past due.
I did speak with Mr. Bachman when he came in today with the letter, and we did talk about that, and so he is going to further investigate the title insurance of that nature to see if he can go back on that.
Right. Jeff?
Well, one thing further, in our future discussion under the write-offs and delinquent utility accounts, it does actually list the previous owner and the correct amount.
Oh.
And then 2 pages later, it actually assesses Mark and Wendy Bachman that amount. So we're writing off debt and assessing a debt. I think we should do one or the other.
The first list is the list of everybody as an occupant. The exhibit attached to the resolution identifies the property owners of those that are accessible.
Okay,
So,
gotcha.
yeah.
Any other questions? Otherwise, we will close this public hearing at 7:06 PM. And we will move to the next one, which is on the same matter, a little bit different charges. Paula?
These assessments incorporate 7 different,
Time is 7:07, sorry.
these assessments incorporate 7 different properties here, 3 of which have been unpaid charges to the fact that we went in and did lawn mowing because they were not, and also we had a cleanup project that they were not doing, so we completed. The other 4 properties, we have had agreements with improvements to their properties, and they have chosen to have those assessed to their parcels according to our assessment policy, to the appropriate interest rate and length of time. We do have one write-off that we'll also address in the resolution. That will be a registration that has been uncollectible.
Questions of Paula at this point? We will have time for more later, I guess, when it comes up. But anyone in the audience that would like to comment on this public hearing? If not, we will close this public hearing at 7:08 PM. Next, we will move to a public hearing on the Maplewood Small Cities Development Program grant application review.
Mayor and members, this is a requirement of the grant that you received and passed through as a loan to Southwest Minnesota Housing Partnership related to Maplewood Apartments, which is located on 5th Street. There's some correspondence included in your packet, Mayor and members. This is really an update for you and an opportunity for the public to comment on any of the improvements that have taken place thus far. As you see from the information included in your packet, the vast majority of the improvements have been completed, and they recently held walkthrough to go over a punch list. For those of you that aren't familiar with that terminology, it's those last little bits of things or things that need to be fixed. There was a scuff on the wall that was painted or something like that that still has yet to be completed. Again, this is a requirement of the grant for you to hold a hearing. This meets that requirement, and there's opportunity for public input, of course.
Anyone on the council have any questions on this one?
If you haven't driven by there lately, there's a substantial
Nice.
amount of improvements on the outside and certainly on the inside. Just to refresh your memory, the grant, the Small City Development Grant portion of the project was around $350,000.
We will not revisit this one later. There is no resolution or anything to be held on or taking up on this one.
Correct, just
Situation.
the requirement to have the hearing.
Okay. Anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this? Seeing no one, we will close this public hearing at 7:09 PM, which we opened at 7:08 PM. All right. Next, we will move to the minutes. The minutes from our last meeting appear on pages 7 through 10. Are there any changes or correction to the minutes? Not, is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of the minutes as they appear, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Next, we will move on to visitors. Is there anyone in the audience tonight that would like to make a comment on any agenda item? Seeing no one, is there anyone in the audience that would like to make any comment at all to the council? Seeing no one, we will move on. Next up, we have the consent agenda. The consent agenda starts on page 11 in detail and concludes with the resolution on page 27 and includes the following budget purchases in excess of $7,500 to Menards for mechanic shop lumber for $21,421.41. To Play and Park Structures for Prairie Ridge Play Structure for $28,502.40. The following licenses all to the Church of St. Peter for temporary on-sale liquor, gambling, and soft drink for 400 Union Street for March 25th, 2017, and the list of scheduled disbursements for October 20th, 2016 through November 9th, 2016. Is there there a motion for approval of the consent agenda?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Any questions about the consent agenda? Jeff?
Point of clarification or point of order. Now, if I have a question on something in here, is it okay to ask it?
Sure.
Or
Yeah.
do we have to remove it? And
No,
on
we
page
can,
18, under DGR Engineering Solar DG Interconnect, I was wondering what that was.
Let me have Pete respond to that one.
Okay.
This is a approval that the council provided a while ago and are waiting for a report on. Pete?
Yeah, every time that a individual solar connection comes in for an application and applies to connect to our system, we have DGR review the installation, the type of connections, all of the inverters, everything that goes on with their system. And then we take that charge from DGR, and that is part of the connection fee that the solar customer or wind customer or distributed generation customer pays back to us as part of the evaluation.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Does that satisfy your question? Okay. I have a question, and I know we're going to be talking about it at a future workshop about our purchasing policy, and we're buying stuff from Menards. And the difference from us, from Menards to St. Peter Lumber on this situation is, I didn't figure out the percentage, but $8,000. I guess I just want to point out that we do only have one lumber yard in St. Peter, just like we only have one car dealer in St. Peter. And hopefully when we get into discussion at one of our workshops, that we take into account what is close enough as part of our evaluation. I just wanted to bring that up, that was on here tonight. That's my little soapbox. Anyway, the consent, any other questions or comments about the consent agenda? Call the roll, please, Bart.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Resolution passes. And next up, we have unfinished business, and we're back to Paula for the unpaid utility charges.
Again, Mayor and Council, we have the annual assessment policy that plan that we can bring to you. These are charges, again, that are delinquent as of May 31st, 2016. The list is on page 30 and 31, which includes the occupants of the property. The tenants of this list have had their names and account balances at the credit bureau for the duration after they are 3 months delinquent on their final bill. At that point, it does go to the credit bureau for them to try to collect for us. Anything that remains as a write-off account will remain at that collection bureau also. We have $5,905.76 of assessable utility charges and $9,927.42 of unassessable charges. Unassessable charges are those that are under $10 in balance. They've gone through the final stages of bankruptcy, or they're a deceased occupant. The parcels that are assessable will be assessed at 1.66%, and they will be on their tax rolls for the 1 year. Property owners do have 30 days from the adoption of this resolution to pay the charges at the Finance Department at City Hall with no interest. Once it passes the 30 days, it will be assessed to the 2017 tax roll, along with interest charges through December of 2017. On page 32 is the resolution that approves the assessments and also the write-offs of these delinquent utility accounts.
Questions for Paula? Roger?
About Mr. and Mrs. Bachman, if we haven't assessed it yet, would that show up in the title search?
Yes. We do an assessment search, and if they've asked us to disclose it, we would disclose it.
So whenever they purchase this, they would have seen it back then?
As long as they get clear title to the property, which you'll get when you purchase title insurance. I know Jim has something he wants to say.
We charge a fee of $35, and we ask
in relation to Mr. and Mrs. Bachman.
In case Mr. and Mrs. Bachman,
Right.
typically the closer, the title insurance company, their attorney, someone on their behalf, when they check the records, not only would they check in the courthouse for mortgages, tax liens, judgments, and that type of thing, but they would also need to check with the city on this potential
Okay.
delinquency.
So as part of their due diligence, they needed to call, the title company in the research needed to call the city as well as checking the courts.
Correct.
Okay.
And they would have done more than called, they would have sent correspondence, a request.
And that's,
So
I'm
not
sorry.
unusual for us to see
Very
in our
standard
city.
operating procedure. I don't want to speak for the legal field, but it certainly is a best practice within the legal field.
But I've had closings with multiple legal sources and title companies, and they all do it. I don't know why they wouldn't have if they did do it, why it got missed.
Any house I've ever bought, I've just trusted the title company. I don't know who they search, but I've trusted that they
Yeah.
search who they're supposed to.
And
That's why you're
you-
paying 'em.
yeah,
Right.
That's why you
Yeah,
buy
yeah.
title insurance. too.
Okay.
So,
And you said that he was, oh, sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
You said that he was looking into that with his title company.
I believe Paula indicated
Paula-
that.
Paula.
Yeah, I
sorry.
spoke with him as he brought the letter in today, so
Okay.
I gave him a little more information, so he was gonna go back and check into the idea of the title insurance.
I mean, at this point, it becomes either an issue of the title company having to, follow through on their end of the bargain through their due diligence, or it comes down to an unfortunate circumstance for these folks. I mean, there's no way for us to find the previous owner at this point and do it on our own. That's the proper channel for that to have been
Eh.
taken care of.
And that that name has gone to the credit bureau already, and so we have been trying to collect on it, from her. We do have a forwarding address, but we've had no luck.
Okay.
It's appropriate for the folks involved in the transaction to solve this, not the rest of your ratepayers.
Correct. I agree.
And if we do collect, she comes through, we just refund to Mr. and Mrs. Bachman.
No, if it's paid by Bachman's, on their taxes, it gets covered there. They now have a judgment or a issue with that prior property owner. Our account has been satisfied, and so we'd have a mess if we tried to try and reimburse those, and then they don't have record of having that lien against that individual.
The method of solution is between the seller and the buyer. We are neither.
Any other questions?
Legalities, I get it.
Not the resolution for adopting the assessment for unpaid charges for municipal utilities and writing off bad debt. Appears on page 32 with the list on page through 34. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second. Any other questions? Jeff?
There's some pretty minor numbers. Is that just a result of them saying, protest, not gonna pay it, or looking at like $42, $35, $34?
Some instances, it's gonna be just, the last bill or something of that nature. It could be just an electric account,
Okay,
so it could be a small apartment.
all right, thank you.
Call the roll, please, Barbara.
Aye.
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 Resolution passes. Next up, we have the assessment of unpaid miscellaneous charges. Paula?
Mayor and council, these charges, again, there's 7 parcels, 7 charges that have accessibility to them. 3 of them for unpaid charges, 2 are lawn mowing and 1 is a property cleanup. The other 4 are for property owners who have agreed to work with us to make improvements to their properties. Most of these are all to do with stormwater, sidewalk, drainage type issues. As you see on page 38, there is a number of years according to our assessment policy that states how many years an assessment can be for and at what interest rate. Our interest rates are determined at 1% over our treasury bonds. And they also have a 30-day window here after approval of the resolution to pay at City Hall interest-free. So if they do choose to not have it go on their taxes, they could also avoid the interest rate that would be accrued December of 2017. After the approval of the resolution, as this resolution and the prior action, we will send letters to all of the property owners telling them of the approval and giving them that detailed information of the 30 days. Also with this information, we do have the $60 of a miscellaneous charge for registration that we have been unable to collect. And so the resolution also will need to state that we are writing off the $60 charge.
Questions on this one? If not, the resolution adopting assessments of unpaid miscellaneous charges and approval to write off uncollectible is on pages 37 and 38. Is there a motion for approval?
I'll make the motion with the change to also include the $60.
Thank you.
Second.
Any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Aye.
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 Resolution passes.
Be-
Concludes our,
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Before we go on, Paul, the amount we're writing off, that we're not gonna be able to collect it all, the $9,900, is as I recall, a very tiny percentage of what our billings are for the year.
Correct?
Less than 1%. Less than
Yep.
half a percent.
Less than half of a percent, yep.
Less than like a quarter or a tenth of a percent.
Very small.
Very small.
anything else? All right, that concludes our unfinished business. Next, we will move on to new business. And the first up is some revolving loan modifications.
I'm sorry, Mayor and members, Russ is unable to be here this evening, so I'll do my best to cover these. I know we have members that either sit on boards or commissions or authorities that could also chime in if I'm lacking some information, but we hope we'll cover it appropriately. The first one relates to the Central Business District Accessibility Enhancement Revolving Loans, and as you know, the council approved this a little while ago, and you understood that there would be 4 or 5 loans that would be discussed as a part of the Economic Development Authority's review of approval of this. What you have included in your packet are 3 that have been recommended by the Economic Development Authority. I think it's important to remember that there were 5 originally associated with this, 1 that was outside of the timeline, and a 4th, which was for playing possum, which was within the body of the resolution, providing for the loan, gave pre-approval should the council move forward with a program of this type. So that's why that one's not included. So the 3 are Community Core Partners, Blado and Chabins LLC, doing businesses, Patrick's on 3rd. As I mentioned, the 5th, related to the Fair Trade Emporium, could also be done by the council if you wished. However, it was outside of the timeline and is not recommended by the Economic Development Authority or your staff. This provides for them to apply as they complete their payments according to your policy to receive a forgiveness as a part of the loan package. The information is included in your packet. The total amount of forgiveness would be about $13,325. And the resolution, well, there are really 3 resolutions. There's 1 for each loan. So what you see on page 41 is for Blado Inc. The one on page 43 is for Community Core Partners, and the one on page 45 is for Chabins doing practice as Patrick's on 3rd. The reason we have 3 resolutions is hopefully not for you to act differently on each one, frankly, because the rules are applied equally to each of these, but for our file to ensure that it traces appropriately. That's why there's a resolution for each one, as there was originally a separate resolution authorizing each loan. Happy to answer questions if I can.
I have a question, Todd. You said 13,000 and something. There's other criteria that they have to meet to be able to receive this right, or this loan forgiveness, though, too.
Correct. There is criteria within the policy that was set or recommended by the Economic Development Authority and approved by you. So as an example, they have to be good on their repayments. They have to be timely and appropriate in the right amount is one of the examples that's out there. There's a few of those. And in addition to that, they also, as they get to that time, will tickle them or let them know that they're at that point, but they certainly have to apply for that forgiveness. It's not automatic as a part of this action. This allows for it to follow through appropriately and the correct paper trail to occur.
So this 13,000 is over the term of the loan. It's not every annually of 13,000.
This would be, that would be the total amount of exposure for all three loans.
Right.
Yeah.
Any questions? If not,
The first one's on page 41.
Yep.
Thank you, sir.
the resolution for the forgiveness for Blado Inc. appears on pages 41 and 42. Is there a motion for approval?
So move.
Second.
Any other questions? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Aye.
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 Abstain.
Resolution passes with one abstention. Next, we have the same resolution, but this one is for Community Core Partners. It appears on pages 43 and 44. Is there a motion for approval?
Move approval.
Second.
Any questions? Call the roll, please. Aye.
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 Abstain.
Aye.
Resolution passes with one abstention. Next up, we have on pages 45 and 46, the same type of resolution for Shabeens, which is Patrick's on third. Are there any questions? Is there a motion for approval?
Move the resolution.
Second.
Any questions now? Call the roll, please.
Aye.
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 Abstain.
Aye.
Aye. Resolution passes with one abstention. Next up, we have the adoption of the comprehensive plan.
Mayor, members, this is an item that you've talked about at workshop, and certainly your Planning and Zoning Commission has worked on for a considerable period of time and with a great level of detail. As you know, at your workshop, the council suggested a couple of small changes which have been incorporated into the overall document as you requested and suggested. I think a copy of that was provided to you, and it has been provided previously at workshop. This is part of the overall process related to a long-term land use plan for the city of St. Peter. And lots of very important things happen as a result of this. And so it's not something that we should take lightly, nor have you, based on the amount of time, energy, and effort that you put into this. Our recommendation tonight, which is included in the resolution on page 49, is that the proposed 2016 comprehensive plan that's been drafted and recommended by Planning and Zoning be approved by the City Council. It would then make it the official comprehensive plan document for the City of St. Peter. And you could expect that if it is approved, you'll see a final version will go up on our website in the next week or so. This does lots of stuff, and without getting into too much detail, it provides for the planning for future land use, where roads might be, where parks might be, what kind of land use you can have, whether it's a place where a factory can be built or a house can be built. It provides a lot of information and critical data from census and other studies that you've provided for, and is kind of that overall master plan land use document for the city of St. Peter, and so it's very important. Again, the information has been provided to you previously. I'm happy to try and answer questions as best I can in Russ's absence, and the resolution is on page 49, providing approval under Minnesota statute.
Any questions?
We had a good discussion at workshop.
I just have one comment. I'd like to thank everyone that worked on this. It just doesn't happen overnight. In talking the other day to just the mayor from a neighboring community, they just did theirs for the first time since 1970, I believe it was.
65.
65, is that when it was? I knew it was a long time ago, and they are basing a lot of what they're doing going forward, based off of the comprehensive plan. Where,
They also spent $80,000.
yeah, and $80,000 later. So anyway, just wanted to make that comment.
We didn't spend that much.
No.
No, but,
Yeah,
a,
no.
but a lot of time and
Yeah,
effort
no.
and energy goes into
Yes.
these. A lot of time, energy, and effort goes into these.
Yes, it does. The resolution adopting the revised 2016 comprehensive plan for the municipal development appears on page 49. Is there a motion for approval?
Move approval.
Second.
Any other comments or questions? Call the roll, please.
Aye.
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 Resolution passes. Next up, we have the Parks Master Plan update.
Mayor and members, Pete is here to describe this as he is one of the chief chaperones of the Park and Recreation Commission, and has worked on this quite diligently for quite a period of time. Again, a very important document, not as overarching as your comprehensive plan that you just approved, but certainly will be coupled into or involved a very important part of the comprehensive plan. So Pete, I'll let you go from there.
Thanks, Todd. Mayor Zeman and City Council, we're asking you tonight to adopt the Parks Master Plan. As you guys are well aware, the Parks Board has worked about the last 18 months trying to pull some of this information together and establish a vision for what we're trying to accomplish here. The main goal that we set out to work with was to preserve the sense of place, livability, and fun for the community members while accommodating growth and working hard with the recreational and social trends of the people who live here. Our overview really was trying to match the resources with the perspectives that we have going on in our community. There's a higher demand for open space, passive play areas, and green space, probably now more than ever. Started in 2015, the Parks Advisory Board, Park and Recreation Advisory Board, began working on this plan. Draft plan was brought back to City Council for first discussion in April. We took under advisement your comments and questions and direction. We worked on our mapping with Bolton and Mink, our engineers, and we also did some of the mapping ourselves, trying to gauge where our future would go to. The previous Parks Master Plan was adopted in 2005 and was implemented the last 11 years. Changes in the last few years include the development of the Community Spirit Park, which you guys have been fully engaged in. Overall, we're going to spend about $3 million in improvements, including land access and development of that park space for our community. It includes a passive park area that will grow with our community and help our school system. It has stormwater storage as one of the amenities out there. It's possible that our implementation of stormwater in the future into some of our parks plans will be relevant from this part going forward. We do have several different types of plantings, different types of grasses out there that are encouraging trail use and just community visitation to look at the nature and the beauty of the area. We've also worked on development of the Travers Green subdivision, Prairie Ridge Park out there in subdivision. That's a new park to serve the subdivision with some different ideas going forward. Again, stormwater is implemented along with some community garden plans and development in that area. One of the more recent developments, along with transportation, that we were fortunate enough to obtain in the area was Ramsey Park development. It was relatively a hidden park out there with very little use, and with the change of the highway out there, has blossomed into a cooperative with the MVED program out there in the school system, and we now have a nice baseball field out there, plus a neighborhood play area for younger kids. And then we've also done some evaluation of the specialty parks. Although nothing has developed, we have looked at archery, BMX, and skateboard opportunities in the land that you guys have provided to us through rental of Missouri County property out there. Some of the trends going forward, some of the things that drive how we plan and what we do, is the last 15 years we've grown about 2,000 people. And so with that comes housing, which comes neighborhood parks, which becomes opportunities for us to develop some of these things. We've also worked really hard on developing relationships with associations. In the past, they have been a participant with us on a variety of different things. As you guys are well aware, Girls Fast Pitch has really worked hard to develop our facilities. We have also worked really hard with the St. Peter Baseball Association and with the St. Peter Soccer Club in order to upgrade our facilities. Veterans Park, Ramsey Park, and Galt Park are all examples of how we've worked with associations to make some of these things happen. Passive areas, as we talked about, passive activities have become more in demand, and activities like pickleball, indoor, and turf soccer are some of the things that are driving how we do things and where our resources go. We've also been able to identify several areas for improvement. Probably the biggest is the ADA compliance. We have 6 out of our 21 parks that meet ADA compliance right now. So we've got quite a improvement to work on during the next few years in order to make that 100% compliant, if that is a goal that is directed by council. We also are working, or need to work on a comprehensive trail system plan. 15 years ago, trail systems were just starting in St. Peter with some of the developments, and on the outer edges is very popular. As you've seen now, they're a mainstay in our major park, at Community Spirit Park, along with our subdivision planning and everything that we plan on going to the west of St. Peter in our growth area. We also need to keep working hard with our relationship with Gustavus and the green space resources that we have and that we're going to be asking for in the future. Gardner Road is one of those areas that you can see is a transportation planning process that we will also be improving our green space and trail system in. One of the main areas that we notice in our neighborhood and community parks is our tot lot playground equipment. Surfaces and just overall equipment need upgrading. To a large degree, we've got to stay with what keeps kids safe, and there are a lot of great resources out there now to make that happen. And then upgrading our existing play equipment is probably a main goal that we can easily identify as in dire need. Some of our funding goals include that we have roughly 154 acres of general use parks, about 783 acres of natural resource areas. It would be very developing if we could work on getting trail system and or access improvement to the natural resource area using some of our water standards and water features a little more for our community. Primary focus is we still try to meet state and federal standards with all of our park improvements. We try to meet changing expectations, although that is kind of a dodging ball most of the time. And then we also want to meet the needs of the growing population. In the future, we hope to have some community visioning. The Parks Board's committed to working to actively participate in that assessment. And we want to meet the needs of the growing population. There are always a lot of ideas out there that we're willing to take a look at and implement. There is a summary on page 20 that talks about our parks classifications and the acreages for each area. There are some minor deficiencies in some of those areas out there, but sometimes we take what we are giving. And so as our natural resource areas become more prevalent, we need to work to develop that a little more. There's a resolution on page 52 that we're asking for approval, and I'm open to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions, comments? If not,
No.
you do.
Sure, of course.
Thought so, but you didn't say anything earlier, so I was wondering.
This is a wonderful thing. I mean, you've been working on it for a couple of years. The biggest number you mentioned was the money we're spending on Community Spirit Park, the $3 million. The budget guy is walking out of the room. It's going to be a little hard to get a straight answer. I know of the $3 million, we spent some money on reserves, money we had saved up for this purpose, but I don't think we're spending anything out of our general fund for this. And he's in the back of the room.
Are you speaking of the Community Spirit
Community
Park?
Spirit Park. Here's another numbers person.
We have sent general fund reserves into this.
Reserves we've saved up from the
infrastructure.
general fund, yes.
Correct, but we have not budgeted particular dollars.
So the rest of the money we're getting from places other than just taking out of our general fund, out of our,
We have a few different sources that are going to be there. And then also in the end, if we are falling short, we have the ability to go back to the utility funds that put in that infrastructure, that they would cover their own portion of that infrastructure also.
so we're cobbling together a number of different sources to avoid having to use property tax dollars.
Correct.
Any other questions? If not, the resolution for authorizing the adoption of the 2016 Parks Master Plan appears on page 52. Is there a motion for approval?
Move for
Mr.
approval.
Mayor.
Second.
We'll let you questions? Call the roll, please.
Aye.
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 Resolution passes. Thank you, Pete. Paul. Next up, we have the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension Agreements.
Mayor, members, the information starts on page 53, and there's a couple of agreements that are principally involved here. Let me talk kind of about the overall big picture, and then if you wanted to talk in specific details, I'm happy to do my best with that. Back in 2011, we entered into these agreements, and these agreements were a 5-year cycle. This was an effort on the part of BCA to ensure rules, processes, access, all of those kind of things that you might imagine in transferring or sharing of data. And so that cycle is concluding. And so there are really two principal agreements that we see here. One, so that your city attorney can receive access and exchange information with the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. One with your police department. That, as an easy example, is how you look up somebody's driving record, as an example. And so these are the agreements that are put in place between the city and the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension in the state of Minnesota. Without these agreements, at some point in the very, very near future, before the end of the year, or at the end of the year, access and exchange of this data would stop, which would not be a good thing and would inhibit your ability to follow the rules that are necessary. This also helps ensure that we are audited on a regular basis as a part of the process to ensure that access or utilization of this data is done appropriately. And that's done on a very regular basis as well, and this outlines how that takes place. So again, originally you entered these agreements in 2011. These agreements are to modify or extend, provide for new agreements in the next new 5-year cycle. The resolution directing the city administrator and the mayor and providing authorization to sign those are on page 74. Again, I'm happy to try and answer questions if I can.
Questions? Roger?
It says that the cost is just over 1,000. What do we spend money on in relation to this?
It really is the payment for the electronic connection, Roger. It's not so much for the data or access for the data, it's the electronic stuff that goes along with this. That's what it takes.
Trying to think of what the electronic stuff would be.
It's fiber optic service to interconnect the systems.
Right, don't we already have that
Um,
in place?
It has to be paid, there's a payment to make sure that it's maintained appropriately. Yeah.
Is it a dedicated line or something?
It is a dedicated line, and in fact, our line actually then couples with Nicollet County's as then it goes to wherever it goes and finally ends up in St. Paul. As you know, those things don't always go in an exact straight line.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
This is what we have budgeted for. This is the regular kind of
Right.
cost that we would see for this. It's not outside of the normal.
Right, I'm not overly concerned with the cost, just the why. That's kind of
Yep.
wondered.
Maintain.
Any questions, comments? Not the resolution approving the State of Minnesota Joint Powers Agreement with the City of St. Peter appears on page 74. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Any other questions? Call the roll, please.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Resolution passes. Next up, we have the 2017 stormwater budget. Paula?
Mayor and council, we have the 2017 stormwater budget. This is the operations that are, the operations listed on page 75 and on the overhead of what the stormwater fund does. Along with storm management, they do the planning and reviewing, inspection of constructions in the right-of-way, locating city-owned utilities in the right-of-way, and then the repair and maintenance of our stormwater infrastructure. The operations for 2017 are going to be very similar to 2016. Our rates are not proposed to change, and the fund also continues to contribute 6.5% of their sales to the general fund. Some of the capital projects that they have listed that are course, different than what the 2016 plan was, are listed on page 79 of the packet. In the 2017 year, we are going to continue to improve one intersection a year at a cost of about $63,000. They improve the stormwater structures at the intersections. The Stormwater Fund staff will also be managing a 3-year sidewalk plan that we had incorporated during our discussion of the general fund. This will take about $100,000 of improvements per year for 3 years. Another item that they are listing as an item is going to be driven by future developments. On North 3rd Street, we had improvements down there, and the idea of putting in a basin in the same area may be necessary as development occurs. So this is listed as a 2017 item. It could be moved out as we see development occurring or not occurring. So there's about $50,000 in there for the engineering of this basin. We also have improvements of equipment. So we are listing a mower, purchasing a couple used trucks, and also some building improvements for about $35,000. On page 78, we do list the projected 2016 as well as the 2017 reserve balances. We see at the end of 2017 a reserve of $276,000, which is about a 49% of our 2018 operational budget. Again, in our general fund, we talk about a fund balance policy that we have at the general fund area being 35 to 50%. Just for correlation, this one would be at a 49% for our operating budget. One unknown for this budget in 2017, as we mentioned earlier here with the Community Spirit Park, if there is additional funding that is necessary for the completion of the park, the appropriate utility will be charged for that portion of the infrastructure that they have improved. So with the stormwater, that could mean about a $53,000 use of reserves. The budget is the resolution is on page 92 with a budget approval of $813,447. Any questions?
Anyone? John?
You're talking about no rate increase this year.
No rate increase.
We've had no rate increase in this utility for 10 years, a long time.
Long time.
That won't continue forever.
No, we do have, along with the development, we have a few different funding sources, and we can do assessment districts of future improvement areas of these basins. We can change rates. The additional inflow of property compared to the number of items that we see improvements needing in the next 10 years or so probably outweigh it, so that eventually there will be a rate necessity to cover all of those costs and the debt services that may go along with it. But as we are seeing it today, we can go forward without a rate increase, not knowing when those improvement projects are going to be necessary.
Any questions? The resolution for adopting, and I'll make the change here now, put it in 2017 stormwater enterprise budget instead of the 2016, appears on page 92. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved. Second.
Any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Resolution passes. That
you.
concludes our new business. Next up, we have reports. So I got a couple of things here. This last Wednesday, there was a group that gathered at Greater Mankato Growth, part of the REDA, the Regional Economic Development Alliance. A bunch of city administrators and mayors from the surrounding communities, or the communities that are involved in this REDA program. Mr. Kwame, sitting on Chris and is our representative and on Greater Mankato Growth for a number of years, was also in attendance, and we signed documents for the new agreement that was done. It was a pretty good turnout. Next up, I don't know if you have anything more to add to that, Todd, or John does. Next up, I mentioned it a couple times before, the Sister City program. We have found housing for all of the people that are going to be visiting. So come the week after Thanksgiving through Thursday, they are leaving on Friday morning, December 2nd, going back. So anyway, we do have housing, and if you see us out in the community, or that's what the group is. So if anyone has any things they would like to share with them, or that would be great. Just get a hold of me at the either on my phone that's applied or on it, or the email that's on the city website. That's all I have.
Mayor, members, if I can, I have a couple that I'll defer to council members. Councilmember Grams and Councilmember Paris went to LMC regional meetings, and so I defer to Roger if you have a few words to say.
The one that I went to was pretty far away, just because I couldn't make the one here locally. Hospital Commission meeting was that same time. I didn't get to stay for the very last session, which I was hoping to, which, spoke about diversity and, how we can talk about that as a community. So I'm hoping that, you were able to get something similar. I think they were doing a similar agenda at all of them, or were they?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. We talked about communication a lot at the session that I was at, and, being cordial to each other, especially with everything going on nowadays. I think that's a really good thing for legislators to remember, is being cordial to each other.
Thank you. And again, Steve went as well, and so I've not followed up with him. These are meetings that occur throughout the state of Minnesota. There's usually anywhere from 8 to a dozen, depending on the year, where they occur, and it's an educational opportunity for elected officials, and oftentimes, or at times, appointed staff also attend. And so certainly diversity and civility are two of the main hallmarks for this last series of meetings, for this year's series of meetings. Next one I have, it relates to the general election. I want to thank Barbara for managing and all of the election judges who participated and spent hours and hours, not only in training, but in participating and helping all of our folks who want to vote be able to vote. And so again, St. Peter had a wonderful turnout. You should be really proud. We'll have some additional data that we'll put in the hot sheet in other places. But St. Peter's traditionally had a very strong turnout, and so we're excited about that this time, and hopefully going into the future. As I mentioned in some of the hot sheet articles, election judges really are the stewards of democracy, and help that go forward. It's a very, very important job, and we're very lucky to have folks that are very interested, continue to be interested to do it, and in training.
Todd, it takes how many election judges to put on an election in town?
I will defer to Barbara for how many, but it's more than a couple. Barb, you maybe know the number off the top of your head, give or take a little bit? 68.
Approximately 68.
It's somewhere between 67 and 69.
And so, and they do a great job. They do a great job. So we're really happy, and really want to thank them. Extra special attention to Barbara and to her crew, again, with the training and the activity that they undertake. I do want to mention that we are continuing to work on an upcoming city-county meeting schedule. So a few dates have been floated around. A final date hasn't been set by the county yet, so hang tough if you're on that. Roger and Steve are on that committee, so hang in there. I'm hoping before the end of the year we'll be able to get one snuck in there, but with schedules and things, it's a challenge always between the holidays here to make everything go. I also want to mention that I have failed to include the goal session written report. I will include that in your next packet, and if you want to go through that again, I'll make sure to mention that at your next packet. As you know, last week with your goal session and election and a few other things was a very busy week, so frankly I didn't have time to get it all jotted down and put together in a nice format, but I promise that I will, as has been your recent tradition, and so at your next meeting it will come forward. One last one that I want to mention before asking you to pass a resolution related to the closed session is that tonight is our first night on your new public access equipment. I was gonna say taping equipment, but that ages me. We don't tape it any longer. We record it, and so this is the crew's first run with the new equipment. So for those of you that are watching or listening on SPPA, we hope that the quality of the video and the quality of the sound is enhanced. And we want to thank our crews and Susan and Mike and Pate and Ryan for helping put that together and make it go. We'll see if there are a few bugs that have to be worked out, but again, this is the first run, and so we hope that it enhances the quality and makes it even more fun to watch on SPPA. We hope that's the case for you. That's the last report that I have. Oh, yeah, thank you, Barb, for reminding me. I do want to mention that as you have a subcommittee that's worked, and a date has been set for a joint school board council meeting for November 30th. So time and location is still being worked out, but around 6-ish. 6 p.m. in the governor's room. And so that is something that we will also be recording for folks to be able to watch on SPPA, and the agenda we're still working on, but that'll be out and available in advance of that meeting. So if you could get that on your schedule, we know that it's a challenging time, and the chances of getting all council members and all school board members in the same place at the same time is not really high, but we try our best to make sure that you have fairly reasonable notice and that hopefully you can make it all work out. Thank you, Barb, for reminding me. The last one that I have, Mr. Mayor, is a resolution on page 93 asking for a closed session under Minnesota statute related to land sale negotiations, and the discussion relates to what we customarily call the wastewater treatment ponds on the east side of the Minnesota River. And so the council will be receiving an update on that. I don't anticipate coming back into open session to take any action on that topic. In fact, there's no recommendation from staff for that. This is really an update, and you'd only come back into regular session to provide for adjournment.
Before that, just realizing that our next meeting will be after Thanksgiving, so happy Thanksgiving to everyone as you're seeing this up until that point. As Todd mentioned, the resolution calling for a closed session appears on page 93. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, there's a motion for calling for a closed session for the purpose of land, city-owned, sale of city-owned land. Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll. Any discussion, sorry. Call the roll, please, Bart. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Resolution passes. We will, like Todd mentioned, we will adjourn and to go to,
We are going to go to room 217. It is the St. Peter room.
so we will not be returning. So we will adjourn to recess to there. Thank you.